Thank you very much, Chair. I was still under the item adoption of the agenda. Needless to say, I supported all the amendments that you proposed. However, Chair, there are the 2 or 3 comments that I would like to make with regard to PGS in general. And I redirect this request to yourselves and the Secretariat. First of all, I think the cancellation of the last meeting was too soon and too close to the meeting, to an extent that really this is a big disadvantage for part-time regulator members like myself. It's very difficult to schedule something else as such as the previous meeting. Secondly, Chair, is that it does make a little bit of a problem that immediately after the cancellation of a meeting, then we request an approval by a round robin. I think such practices should be guarded against in terms of us being accused of poor planning. And finally, Chair, I may be wrong. I may not be on this committee for some time, but the cancellation of the meeting last time may be the cause of the lengthy agenda that we have today. I may be wrong, but I think the first 2 issues, I thought I should raise them fairly strongly, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mkwena. Thank you for those issues. We can talk about them at the end of the meeting, when we close the meeting, from the members of the public, since those are governance issues that we can then deal with, so that we can correct them going forward and deal with the challenges that we may have faced since we could not have the meeting of January. If we can note that, Mr. Mabunda, and then we will deal with that issue once we close the meeting from the members of the public, as it is a governance issue. Thank you. Right. Then can we move on to the first agenda item to be discussed? If you could introduce that agenda item, taking into account the guidance that was provided, of which guidance must also be acknowledged as improvements or enhancements in the document, in the way that you are going to present in this meeting.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, before the subcommittee is the consultation document and the submission that goes with that consultation document. The documents were necessitated by 2 things. The first one is the surge in the international gas price, and the second one is the unintended consequences that we have picked up when implementing the methodology. I will start by explaining the surge in the international gas prices, and then move on to the other consequences of the methodology. Chair, on the international gas price, there has been an increase in the international gas price, and that increase has affected the entire global natural gas market. As a result, the natural gas price centered on the market-based pricing principle have become volatile, and this has also affected the NERSA methodology, since it's also based on the competitive benchmark prices. As a result, we believe that those prices that are causing the surge in the international gas price, they have nothing to do with the local gas price. And therefore, we have come, what is it that NERSA can do to cushion the customers or the consumers against those international gas price increase? And then the options that we have to take care of those international gas price is that we come up with we adjust the price by 5 years instead of adjusting it by 12 months. That way, when we adjust it by 5 years, it smoothens out the increase or the excessive price increase that may have the negative impact into this local gas price. That is the option 1. The second option that we are proposing is that we cap the increase by 10%, either downwards or upwards, so that we take care of the needs of the customers and the supplier. So that is that regarding the surge in the international gas price. Now, coming to the unintended consequences that we have picked up while we are implementing the methodology, we are saying that there are consequences that were unintended and that were not foreseen at the time of the development of the methodology. I will just list those unintended consequences. The first one is the price of the acquisition price of gas versus the trading margin. When we do the calculation, we know that the trading margin is coming as more than double the price of the acquisition cost. The second one is the issue of clarifying what is our mandate with regard to the trading cost versus the trading margin. We want to clarify that. The third issue is relating to the maximum price that are determined by third-party traders versus the hub prices. So those are the issues which we believe that they are causing deficiencies or distortion in the current methodology that we want to rectify. And therefore, the proposal on the consultation document is that we review the current methodology, or we come up with a new methodology, and there are it's 6 options that are presented there in the methodology. We are proposing that the committee allows that a consultation process be undertaken which will then take care of the unintended consequences and the surge in the international gas price. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Is there any addition from the team here? So there is no addition from the executive manager. If not on this matter, then I will proceed to ask members to provide guidance as well as input in relation to the decision that is required from the members today, which is to publish this discussion document, to engage stakeholders out there so that they know what the regulator is doing in relation to the high prices that we have seen internationally, and so that they don't begin to just ask what is NERSA going to do through the social media, as we have seen some of the stakeholders asking about that and the impact in the local prices of gas. So I would like the members to engage and also provide some guidance with regards to the proposed options. If there are any factors that must be taken into account to address the weaknesses and some shortcomings, or to guard against eventualities that are not seen at this stage, and also to just make sure that we are also adhering to the principles that were articulated by the Concord.
Clear that that you know, every accommodate this keep the job to accommodate we know
I'm partly covered by my colleague, Mr. Mkhize, because I was also going to say a number of our stakeholders operate not only in this domain, but operate in a number of domains. And clearly, a lot of them would then be subject, would then also have some of our stakeholders, especially on the consumption side, could well be able to, especially for consumers that have got gas as a primary input into their operation, that when they decide in terms of whether to locate in one country or the other, it's about stability of both supply and stable, and stable and predictable, I guess, for the by the investors in the sector, both people that are investing in the gas on the supply side, but also those that are actually running away from us. So we do need to actually get input from our stakeholders. But I therefore support the actual consultation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kumede. Let me just check with my colleagues.
Echo the views expressed by my earlier colleagues. I mean, the methodology must stand the test of time. I mean, that's what I hear from their side, and then we change the methodology. That can happen. I think that's the point that is being made. And I think the point that Mr. Mkhize made, which may be subtle in that, in addition to what he was saying, and therefore, Chair, I do support that both the workshop and the publication of the consultation paper are not mutually exclusive, and therefore we must go ahead with both. Thank you very much, Chair.
I also do support the consultation paper, and also to reiterate the point made by Mr. Gumete to say that we really do need a methodology that will be predictable and give some certainty such that the players within the industry are able to plan accordingly. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, members. So all the members, I'm also in support, and the team must make sure that the input and the guidance given in the workshop as well as in this meeting to guide the approach. They must also make sure that this consultation document is enhanced to reflect the members' sentiments and guidance on this. So it means that you must make sure there is an approach in the formula which will make sure that it covers any unforeseen eventualities that may actually happen, such that the methodology need not be changed every time there are certain market dynamics that are happening, and therefore there is nothing in the methodology that can limit either excessive increases or excessive reductions, so that you balance both customers and stakeholders. So the methodology must be able to have that aspect in it. As members have indicated, and I'm hoping that you will really underline that aspect that must be there, so that it's a discretion that you put in the methodology to say, if this happened, this is what the default position is going to be, and so that you don't always need to amend the methodology. Please, that is the first thing, and if the secretary can record it as such, as members have indicated. And then the second thing that members have again indicated is that there's a need to clarify this hub pricing approach, even if we don't use it as reference, even if we just use it as for comparison purposes to see how competitive the South African price is. So it's two things. You either use the hub pricing approach in order to determine the price, or not to determine it, but to simply compare how the South African market compares with other markets, so that you are within the context of Section 21(1)(p), which talks about competition and well as competitive prices. So that is the second thing that you must then be very clear on it, on this aspect. The third thing that was raised that must also be recorded to make sure that you address, the members asked about the issue of the profit margin that it must be, the context of it must be clearly articulated. Because if you are going to come up with a formula that includes the return, then you can't again add a margin. So put the right context there in terms of how NERSA navigates to get to the upper bound, meaning the maximum, from which discounts must be applied so that the licensee can be able to have a price for class 1, a price for class 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6, as stipulated in the regulations read with Section 22 of the Gas Act. That is the third thing that must be clarified. The fourth thing on the legal context that we've asked the team to look at is to put that context that we are not determining a methodology for the actual prices, such that when you do these comparisons with other prices are at the actual. What NERSA is required to do, as clarified by the Constitutional Court, it is the maximum. And therefore, that maximum, the Constitutional Court stated clearly that then when there's a cost, as well as that maximum level of the price, the surplus in between must be such that it is fair and it is distributed equitably. That is the principle that will inform this methodology, and it must be stated and be recorded as such, and it must appear in this methodology. So if those things can be taken into consideration. And lastly, it must also be considered the criticism and the guidance provided by the Constitutional Court in its judgment regarding the cost passed through, where it indicated that it may well have shortcomings to the extent that it doesn't enable the regulator to set that upper bound that it is legally required to set. So that weakness that was pointed out by the Constitutional Court, it must also feature prominently in everything that you are doing as you consider each option. So those are the key issues that the members indicated, and also the context as to what is it that we are trying to achieve here. What problem are we trying to solve? That must also be in the background context. So those are the enhancements that are expected. And given that, members, can I then take you to the recommendations? And the recommendations are that the PGS approves the publication of the discussion document, which covers the different options that stakeholders must comment on and provide input, as well as stakeholders proposing other options of pricing that will reflect the South African market dynamics, as well as the regional dynamics, to the extent that South Africa imports gas from other countries. So that is the summary. So also that to approve that an interim methodology be used, but only after the consultation. So stakeholders may make proposals on the interim methodology that must be approved. Thirdly, that we approve that the existing methodology be amended and refined to take care of the concerns that have been articulated, and also incorporate new pricing formulas that will reflect Thank you, Mr. Tole, and I also support. Thank you. We then step out of that. Findings and what are the recommendations? In that order, please. Thank you. Mr. Tole.
As you've stated, that this is the audit, the ROMCO audit report. Protection Station Secunda, and as well as in of the findings, Chairperson, and the recommendations. That is under the jurisdiction of the nuclear, the nation. On the fuel gas station, wherein the meat peeling was done on results by the end of June 2022. about the flow conditioners. Have
Please go ahead.
In PGS
forward-looking stance in this regard. That is one. Then, secondly, it would be appreciated if the annexures, especially if one looks at the certificates, the calibration certificate, and others, are made to be more readable, coveting that there is a lot of compliance with all that is required of the licensee, and also there are time frames that are set in terms of providing updates and therefore complying with where there is non-compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Sitole?
Thank you, Chairperson. I think mine it's either clarification or correction. On Annexure A, under the finding on fuel gas station, under our recommendation, we are saying we require the licensee to correct or replace 2022. So I thought the date had passed. Maybe there was some mistake.
Is it a lingering hand?
Apologies, it is. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mkwena?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Mr. Mlatvi. It will be helpful. The question that we normally ask, Chair, I don't remember it being responded to. It may have been this target of meeting the volumes by the year after 25 years of our local regulator. Making a comparison with their counterpart on the other side of the border, if anything, I mean and any chain is as weak as the weakest species, then the whole thing will fall down. So basically, what I'm asking is there a possibility of sharing notes between the two regulators in terms of audits and assessment? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, the operational costs that we allow in the tariff itself for the ROMCO GTA, I suppose it will be GTA 2 as well as GTA 3. So let us then deal with that as well, so that we can see what comes a link for the benefit of the members.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, firstly on Mr. Mkhize, yeah, I think we'll incorporate that because he said we need to do a comparison. We will improve on the report next time, Chairperson. I think those are very good suggestions. Then on Mrs. Tolle, the date for 27 Jan, it's not a mistake, Chairperson. So the date has been there. I think it's only the team should just make a follow-up, ensuring that the information is submitted as promised by the licensee. Technical to technical, and we try by having the table, for instance, where we have annexure 1. As well as at the end of the report, there is a table there where we try to summarize the results of these issues. You tend to get lost, or the meaning of what you are trying to say sometimes get lost. But we'll try, Chairperson, to make it easier and simple. Summarize as statively covered in the volume balance report that we present in every PGS. So any issues related to volumes is mostly dealt with under that project, Chair. And related to maintenance and tariffs. What I can say from my side, Chairperson, is that the black powder accumulates in the filtration station after the pigging of the pipeline. Now, But then I think on this one, Chair, maybe I'll ask Sam, if he's here, chairperson, to talk on that issue, because I think that is his forte. So I don't want to dwell on the issues that are outside my sphere of competence, Chair. Yeah, the issues, chairperson. Thank you.
Samuel, can you please indicate, even if you don't indicate the cost itself, it will be dealt with in the tariff itself and be subject to these audits, and the documents that are here will also be subject to when we're doing the RRM audits on an annual basis for ROMCO, because of the cost cations as well. So if you can explain that part, and also which GTA, because I don't know what portion of the pipeline, and we need to make sure that it's not going to be claimed in two tariffs here, because we have a tariff for the main pipeline, GTA 1, and that one doesn't vary. It's only get escalated by PPI. That must be clear. Then the second one for the compressor station in Komati Port, that is the GTA 2. So then the third one is GTA 3 for the small pipeline that is in the Mozambican border. Now, it is important to properly locate the portion of the infrastructure that was affected, so that we avoid duplication. If it has happened in the main pipeline, we don't vary that. They must not claim it anywhere else in the GTA 2 and GTA 3. That must be very clear. They take what we give them because that's what they chose, and that is what is escalated only in terms of PPI. It doesn't vary. That is very important for the regulator. Otherwise, you will be allowing a duplication of cost at the detriment of South African consumers. Can you clarify that aspect of the black powder and all of the other things that were done from the maintenance? Where did it happen, and how the cost there for which pipeline or infrastructure is affected?
Thank you, Chair. I think you have summarized it correctly, Chair, to say it will be assessed when we are assessing tariffs. And if, for instance, the applicant brings those black powder costs, they will have to prove that they belong in that port or in that GTA that they are bringing to us. So obviously we would want to check what is caused the black powder. Is it from the entire gas that is flowing in the tariffs are being done, Chair, particularly on the black powder costs?
Was also a question raised by Mr. Mukwenda regarding the sharing of notes between the two. Amongst themselves, the two teams from amongst themselves from applications or environment, the team could actually not do this.
What is it? The gas trade agreement. This audit. One gas trade agreement. So these audits, they are stated done. So usually there's always an agreement between Sasol and compliance audits conducted in the Ronco pipeline during that period. Compliance monitoring reports that are considered by this committee. That is the second. By show of hands, members, if you could take it that you are also noting, Mr. of its biogas production in terms of Section 28 of the Gas Act.
biogas production activities in terms of section wastewater from its wastewater treatment. A 45 cubic meter collection pump. So the wastewater is mixed according to the applicant. They'll be generating around 48,498 gigajoules of biogas per annum, Chairperson. We, in view of that, Chairperson will be asking the reasons for decisions, as well as the certificate and associated conditions for the registration of the gas activities, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milatu. Members, the request to approve the registration of that biogas production in terms of section 28 is before you, members. If there's anything that you would like to suggest as an improvement, or if you have a question of clarity, by show of hand, members, if you have any question. Thank you. Mr. Gumede, you may start.
Thanks, Chairperson. Just one question. I was just wondering that in the event that
partly covered already by Mr. Gumede on this one. Because in the same vein that when we're dealing with electricity, and we look so if that information could be in terms of the technology curve with these facilities, so that we don't talk of registration, but we're talking about facilities that in terms of technology are still way back in the early 2000s. So we just like that information, so that these facilities, they do actually play the meaningful role that they're intended to play. That would be all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Please respond, Mr. Milato, and perhaps acknowledge the last point about the terms of our database when you update on the registrations, because biogas is also considered as part of this screen based on what we have registered. And then perhaps that capacity, you may also show the equivalence of that capacity in terms of in terms of the megawatts. I think that would also be good in the next submissions, if you could do that.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, on Mr. Gumete's question, I think we've stated in the report that for now, Vinaqua has got no use for this gas, as they are still planning this power generation through this biogas. So currently, they've reported that they are flaring some of this gas, which maybe is also well, environmentally, it becomes a project of this nature. So that remember, sometimes the applicants are not even aware that they need also to apply for registration, as well as power generations from the other side. So it becomes important, maybe advice from the team working in collaboration with the electricity counterparts, so that we give them proper guidance as to the sub-work for efficiency purposes. Then on the report on updates, if you recall, Chair, we once submitted a report, a 10-year report on biogas activities, particularly on registration, where we stated the technologies that have been used, as well as a conversion of biogas volumes into. I think there was supposed to be a second report that we needed to submit, which I think the team will have to prepare, maybe early in the next financial year, so that we can incorporate all those issues that Mr. Mkhize has raised, as well as yourself, talking to technology, as well as the one, funding, and secondly, due to operational expertise. some of these issues will also be addressed in there. Thank you, Chair.
For your approval of this registration. Thank you, Mr. Kumede. Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. African market in terms of section 21(1). Approved prices, we must first of all determine inadequacy